Heart to Art, creative conversations inspiring working artists to thrive. A Periscope show hosted by Net Designs, and Anne was here. I'm going to ask Vicky if she would just introduce herself a little bit and tell you about what she does and all that good stuff.
Well, I'm a designer, and more recently I've described myself as an artist. And I live here in Rome, but I lived in New York for 12 years, and I've been a working artist for about, nearly 20 years. And I got started because I won some university-based competitions. I won some bursaries, and that took me to New York. And when I got there to do an industry research project, theoretically, but I went to visit a lot of the studios in New York, and I got offered a couple of jobs, one of which I took, which, that took me to New York. And since then I've been working as a designer, mainly as women's wear fashion textile designer. But during that period as well, I also did design for paper products. And of course, in the recent years, with this massive surgence of the service pattern design industry, I was well prepared to start working in that with my experience in fashion textiles and paper product design. So I could go a bit more. Do you want me to go more into my background?
Well, I was going to actually ask you about that too. So as far as having your own business, Victoria Johnson Design, even though you've been around in the industry for a long time, you have become super successful in a relatively short amount of time on your own. So can you tell everyone about your experience that led you to where you are and how you got where you are today?
Well, I owned a studio. I started out working in a studio in New York, and within a few years I started my own studio, and it was based in Manhattan and in London, and I had 3 partners. And we did mainly women's wear fashion textiles, where we would design prints and sell them to the key retail manufacturers in America and UK. And basically, I got a lot of business experience from running that and co-owning that business. I did less designing during those 4 years that I was part of that, but I got so much business experience in terms of accounting, in terms of business organisation. And so when I had my daughter, I opted out of the business because we wanted to move to Italy. We did that when my daughter was about 4, and in the meantime I worked as a freelancer at home. And I never completely stopped designing, but there was a sort of lull in my career for a while my kids were little, because I had a son as well when I came here. And then when my son was 1, I decided that I just wanted to start my own business under my own name and start from scratch, really, putting to use all of the experience that I'd had in the last 15 or so years, 16 years. So that's what I did. And I think that what stood me in good stead was the experience of owning a company, the experience of working for years with some of the biggest names on the market for women's wear and other products as well. Yeah. And understanding what the market wants and how to tailor what I did to the market. So I think, that is the reason why things moved quickly for my own business, was because I had this former experience. Great. Artistically and business-wise.
And that's really great to hear, because I think a lot of times from the outside looking in, when someone realizes that they want to switch careers and do this for a living, they see people like you and they think, like, how did she just get, it seems like you just got there and you're just doing well so easily, but really there's usually a history behind that of experience, and it's not easy to just jump in and be really successful. You really need to be patient and develop that kind of experience. So it's really good to hear that.
I think one of the things is, aside from being artistic and having the artistic goods, having the discipline to organize a database of clients, for example, or having the discipline to organize your accounts to some extent, and having the discipline to show up every day and work a full working day and not treat it like a hobby. I think those are, hugely impactful on whether things are going to work out for you or not, because it's not enough to be good at art. It's not enough.
Okay. And that was goes to my next question was, for people who are just starting their design career, what kind of advice would you give them to be on track for a successful career? Is there anything else you would add to that?
Well, yeah, I think the whole idea of just show up it's a big deal. If you sit down for, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 8 hours a day and devote yourself to something, you're going to be putting the chess pieces in place. Then you're going to be, in order to build something, and then eventually you're going to start putting the bricks in place to actually construct something. And after a period of time, you're going to find yourself with something credible in your hands that you've built slowly by chipping away. But if you do it sporadically and you don't show up and you don't put the hours in, that's not going to happen. That would be my main thing. And but having the self-discipline to do that is and the self-motivation, it's rough. It's difficult.
Especially if you have...
And I think that it's a key part of it.
Yeah. And especially difficult if you have kids, which I don't, so I can't even imagine how you do that. But you have to be super disciplined and make sure you make time for it, right?
Well, in a way, having kids was a blessing for me, because I'm not very routine orientated, and kids impose a structure on your day. For example, they make you get up in the morning early. So in a way, when you have kids, you can structure your day more effectively around their needs if they're at school. When they're babies, I don't know how people manage to do this when they have tiny babies, because I found it really hard. But there are advantages to them being at school. You have to work within those hours. You have to work when they're in bed, and you can't just limitlessly plug away at things. So you have to be more focused. So it's not all bad.
Yeah.
Having to work around having children.
Yeah, I'm sure it actually develops a greater discipline in you. So, like you were saying.
Yeah, it did in me.
And then I wanted to mention, because you've been doing this for a while, but only recently have you really started talking about it. But Vicky offers artist consultations, because she gets a lot of questions as it is, and I think she realized at some point, in order to really help everyone and have the time, she decided to start doing paid consultations for artists. So Vicky, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about those consultations and what you offer?
Yes. Well, I myself have experienced, the sort of discouraging environment of being at home on your own with very little feedback, trying to work as if you're in a studio, but not being able to turn around and ask somebody's opinion about what you're doing, not having an art director. And that is the downside of working at home. The upside, of course, is, it goes without saying, there are a million reasons why it's good to be at home, available for your kids, or able to take a break on your own terms. However, if you are feeling a little lacking in direction, as I think many of us have done and many of us do, I think it's good to have an experienced eye from somebody with a lot of, history in the industry, who can help you, point you, guide you, and support you towards what you want to achieve. And I think I feel, that I am the right person to do that with the right experience. And because a lot of people have asked me, I want to provide that service, but obviously I can't do it, as a sort of totally altruistic thing. So I've created it as a facet of my art business.
Yeah.
And so far I've done a few of them, and I hope I'm right in saying successfully. And I'm really enjoying it as well. I really enjoy doing it.
I saw a few people mention that they've had consultations with you and they really enjoyed them, and that you were funny too, which is one of my favorite things about you. How someone's asking how they're structured. How do you structure your consultations?
They've kind of sort of organically structured themselves. What I tend to do is I will ask the client to write me a list of 5 bullet points of their key concerns, and that means that I can then look at their work, everything they can possibly give to me to look at, PDFs, websites, Flickr, whatever they can. And it doesn't have to be amazingly organised or advanced, professionally presented artwork, because I can gauge quite easily how to tackle their concerns from a fairly basic portfolio. But whatever they can give me, I ask them to send it to me, and then I review the artwork within the context of what their key concerns are, what those 5 bullet-pointed questions are, so that when we're talking during that hour, it's a very focused conversation that really hones in on what their needs are. And I start myself beforehand. I sit reviewing the work, and I create a web chart, the circle in the middle with the spokes coming off. And the web chart each spoke will relate to the bullet pointed questions, and I'll make my notes. So each consultation is very much individually geared towards the client, and depends on their particular needs. And it will cover things from a basic portfolio review to discussing particular strengths and weaknesses, bearing in mind that this is my opinion.
Right.
And it should be sifted through as desired by the client.
Right.
Strengths and weaknesses, a plan, discussing, how to go forward, how to attain certain goals, maybe discussing colour, something as specific as colour and how to improve on colour or trend sourcing. Basically covering anything that is specific to the person I'm talking to. And then afterwards, I decided that, I thought it was only fair to add a written recap of the consultation afterwards. It's a brief recap that touches on all the points that we discussed.
Good.
For them to refer to down the line. So that's it, really.
That's really...
I think it's working.
Great. That's really helpful. So if anyone wants to inquire more about that, you can email her at victoria@victoriajohnsondesign.com. And she also has more information on her website. By the way, here's all of her information. If you want to take a screenshot of this, that's her website, her Instagram, and her Facebook. And she's lovely to follow on Instagram. She has one of the most beautiful Instagram feeds. And I think your Instagram just hit it's over 18,000, right, Vicky?
Yeah, it's nearly 19, I think, today.
Great.
It just ticked over.
So exciting. One. So you could probably also consult artists on how to build their Instagram following, because I know you've been talking to me about that, and you know a lot of tips and tricks on that too. So that's really cool.
Well, I implemented a strategy. Obviously, I'd read about it online and stuff, but I implemented certain strategies, and it worked. It really worked. Quite basic ones, but you would be surprised how effective they are. So yeah, if that was somebody's concerns, it would definitely be something that I could discuss and help with, I'm sure.
Well, thank you for being generous with your knowledge and sharing it with everybody. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are really excited for the opportunity to work with you on building their business and brand. So thanks. Okay, so I'll move on to some more questions about the creative process, because we've kind of talked about you and what you do and that kind of thing and your background. So the first question is that I know many designers look up to you and follow your work as a source of inspiration. and knowing what is on trend in design. I've personally even been given your artwork on style boards and mood boards from art directors on several occasions where they're like, look, like we put all these pretty things together. You know, this is a style board. Like they're not asking me to copy it, but they're like, something like this. You know what I mean? We love what she's doing. So, the point of my question is, not only do you use on-point subject matter and colors, but your techniques, the techniques you use result in very cutting edge and an ever-evolving style. So my question is, do you create artwork with a specific end use or application in mind? For example, wall art, linens, that kind of thing. Or do you just create art for general use?
I think when I set out to create a new group, there are certain things I bear in mind. I think the easiest thing to bear in mind is paper products and stationery, because something you design for that market is very translatable to other markets. If you're designing something very specific or obscure, if you have something obscure in your head, it's going to be less translatable. I'm not much of a narrative artist. I very much decorate things. I like to decorate with, I like things that are vehicles for patterns, such as butterflies and flowers.
Vicky, Julie H. Design says, haha, I got a brief yesterday with a whack of Vicky's work included. Oh. I told you, it happens all the time.
Wow. That's good to know.
Sorry to interrupt you. I hope you remember where you were at there.
No, I haven't got a clue. What was I saying? I can't remember. About designing with things in mind. So I have certain sort of staple subject matter. Recently, I have a sort of my colour palette that I'm fairly consistently using, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But I have staple perennial subject matter that I bear in mind. I know pretty much which colour palettes are going to work and be commercial, and which are probably a little bit off the wall. Mm-hmm. So, there's a whole array of factors that contribute to what goes into the design and how it finally looks, beyond simply what market it's going to be for. And I think that a design that takes into consideration all of those things is going to be applicable to, a huge variety of products.
Great. So, okay, cool.
Did that not make sense?
No, it did. I was just processing. I'm also thinking one question ahead. So if I have blank stare on my face, I'm like, so many things. Sorry. So, how often are you working to a client brief versus doing your own personal project based on, what you want to do at the moment?
I couldn't really say in terms of percentages. It sort of fits and starts. There'll be a period where it seems like it's back-to-back projects, and then there'll be a leaner period where I have more time to do my own work. I really enjoy doing my own stuff. A lot of it, I do have quite a good rate of selling or licensing with some of my regular clients. So I feel like when I'm producing my own projects, I feel like it's a very worthwhile thing to do.
It's not going to just sit in your portfolio. You'll actually be able to sell it.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's going to sort of malinger. So I'm very, very happy doing the things that I want to do versus doing projects. The best type of project is obviously when somebody asks you to do something based on your existing work. Yeah. But I couldn't really say a percentage of one versus the other. It evens out over the course of a year.
Lisa Blue is asking if you update your color palettes based on Pantone of the year or any kind of research like that, or is it just something that you do naturally within yourself?
I have my preferences. If you look on my Instagram, you'll see that there's pink in everything. I'm wearing pink. You'll see that there's this mint green in everything. My whole house is bedecked in this mint green, and there's blue and in nearly everything recently as well.
I hope your husband likes that color palette too.
I don't think he cares. Fortunately, I don't think he cares. But so basically, yeah, that I have the colours that I like, and I used to try and steer away from them and be a bit more versatile. And then I realised that actually the colours I like are the colours that lots of other people like as well.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to incorporate the colours I like consistently into everything I do. But in addition to those colours, I do take into account trends, very much so. For example, I take into account home furnishing trends. The rose golds, the coppers that are coming in that have been prevalent everywhere recently, the yellowy ochres, the Pantone colours. When the orchidy purple colour came in, I made sure that it got a good, I used it in quite a few designs. And then, fortunately, this year, the Pantone 2016 colours are all the colours I like anyway. Yeah. So I've got no problem this year.
Yeah, that's
just
true.
Do what I usually do.
It just works.
I do take into account colour trends, absolutely, and I add them to the colours I like.
Cool. Okay, and then, so that kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but that was okay because someone had a question on it. When you start a new piece of art or collection, how do you determine the subject matter? I know you said earlier that you kind of have your go-to subject matters, but are you looking somewhere or are you pulling from a list? How do you figure out what you're going to do next?
Oh, well, as I said, I'm not really telling stories as much with my art as some other brilliant artists are. I am more working with a view to decorating, and there are certain things that are perennial subject matter: flowers, butterflies, birds. These are all things that people will buy into year after year after year. You can look at any decade in the last century and there will be butterflies, flowers and birds in every single era of decor, all done in different ways but consistently. And then, the last decade or so, there's been this enchanted forest, magical forest trend that I thought at the time, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, was going to come and go, and it hasn't gone.
Yeah.
And it's still here. And it sort of mutates and takes different forms as it goes along. But not mutates, evolves is a nicer word. But there are certain things that just stick around, and I know pretty much what they are at this point. And, I make sure that they feature in a lot of the things I do. For example, Christmas, there are the set imagery that is Christmassy. You can do it in a million different ways, and you can evolve it. For example, I did a partridge this year. I've not done many partridges in the past. But there are certain things that are universally, perennially appealing to the women who buy mainly from this industry that we're designing for. And I do bear that in mind when I'm designing.
Beetroot Press loved your partridge, Vicky.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so when you start a collection or a piece of art, and someone else does too, Brown Paper Bunny, when you start a new collection, do you create mood boards or style boards? Do you use Pinterest? If not, what steps do you take, if any, to develop your concept before putting pen to paper?
Recently, my techniques are determining my concepts for a design more than before, because I'm really enjoying getting back to painting, and I'm really enjoying that process of experimenting and then thinking, okay, that was an interesting outcome. What can I turn that into? In the past, I think I would have, I was using Pinterest more for inspiration. I definitely recommend doing that. I think you need to stay abreast of what's going on in the market. You need to be researching, enjoying looking at Pinterest. you need to know what's going on around you, what your peers are doing. You need to know all of that, and what the shops are doing. You need to be looking on print and pattern. But I think I've sort of reached a stage now, fairly recently, where I'm less interested in what's going on, and I'm more interested in dancing to the beat of my own drum.
Which is,
but it's always within the context of what's around me, because if it's not, you can lose sight of what's commercial.
Yeah.
You have to bear that in mind.
A couple of questions about that. Someone asked if do you use a sketchbook?
Do you know what? I don't. I always feel like I should. I really feel like I should. I really feel like I should keep millions of sketchbooks, but I've never kept one.
That's good to know. I'm sure there's other people who don't. I actually don't use a sketchbook that often.
You draw straight into the computer like me, don't you?
Sometimes I do. I do sketch on random sheets of paper before I paint to like get my idea out first, but I don't keep things in a sketchbook, which is kind of silly because it's probably good to have a record of that.
Well, this is it. I found that, for doing more hand-rendered stuff and then sticking it in the computer, I would just scribble on a bit of paper, or like you said, have loose sheets, and I've got loose sheets all floating around. But I feel like if I have a sketchbook, it just stares at me and makes me worry about making it nice.
Yeah, it's like I like to throw my sketches away when I'm done with them, because they're like they don't look that good. Like my sketching looks like I can't draw usually.
But that's the thing, if you do one really awful one, it ruins the whole sketchbook. I don't like to ruin the sketchbook, so I'd rather just not have one, not be intimidated by it.
Yeah, I did a sketchbook review where I flipped through and I showed some pretty awful things, because I do have some sketchbooks that I've used in the past. And then it's funny because Stephanie Corfey looked through hers and she literally doesn't have one bad. She is incapable of sketching something bad. It was funny. Another question that came in while we were talking, Vicky, was, do you advise that artists work in groups? Do you think it's better to work in groups versus just like one-off pieces of art?
Well, look, I know you don't need to work in groups to sell your work, but for me, there are many reasons, good reasons for working in groups. Primarily because it makes you more efficient. For me, developing a colour concept and a design concept is a fairly laborious, concentrated effort, especially colour. And colour is the cornerstone of a good design, in my opinion. And to develop a good colour concept is time consuming. If you spend all that time doing all that work and then you only apply it to one design, then you've got to start from scratch again with the next one. So why not apply it to a bunch of designs that are cohesive? And then you'll work faster and more efficiently in a more focused way. Also, once you've applied it to those, let's say between 4 and 8 pieces, each one merchandises the next one. And I can't tell you how many times I've sold the whole group to a company because they've been interested in not just one, but the whole lot of them sitting together.
Cool.
So that's another reason for working in groups.
And
the other reason is that I just feel that a piece of work, for me, my work, I feel it has more impact if it sits as a group. And I think that I like to present a body of work, a cohesive body of work. It's like, I've said this, I was talking about this the other day with Deborah Velasquez. Sorry, Deborah. But I was saying, if you go into a shop and you see a bunch of things that are merchandised to go with each other, a body of design, a skirt, a handbag, a top, a necklace. If it's merchandised well and they sit together, you might buy into all 4 things. If they're just random pieces, you might just buy the one and then walk away. And it's the same with what we're doing. If you're doing anything that's visually decorative and appealing, the more you sit it in a group setting, well merchandised group setting, I think the more marketable it is. I think it's just human nature.
That makes great sense. I've never really thought about that from a merchandising standpoint. That's a really good point.
Well, that's a fashion thing, because we used to merchandise our fashion collections really, really rigorously, because it was the key to getting them sold.
Cool. Deborah Velasquez says hi, by the way. And Omar Wynn is asking, our friend Omar, hi Omar, is asking if how many groups or how many pieces would you recommend in a group? Like, is there a range that you usually work in?
I tend to do between 4 and 8. I used to do 8, but I'm finding that's, I think between 4 and 6 is fine. If you were doing placement art for, greeting card, like, a complete picture, 4 of those or 2 of those and a couple of patterned repeats, or 4 of them and 2 little mini coordinates. That's the other thing about working efficiently. If you've done a group of 4 pieces, it takes, and you've got your concept, you've got your elements, you've got your colour palette, it takes 0 effort to add 2 coordinating pieces from a very ditzy motif within the designs you've already done. And you've got 1 more sellable piece. Yeah. And if it never sells, it at least made the rest look more cohesive, cuter and more appealing.
Yeah. And a lot of times, in my experience, I don't know about you, those coordinates that take you like just a few, like very little time to create, you can sell them for almost just as much as the staple piece. So it's like, it's really worth the time to take a little bit of extra time to build out the extra coordinates, because if you sell them, you're making good money for the amount of time that you've invested.
And then there's one more reason that's compelling reason to work in groups. I'll show you something actually. If you start with a concept, throughout the process of creating the group, you develop the concept, and you may end up at the end with something that was totally unexpected, because you've been on a sort of developmental journey from one thing to the next. So, for example, if you look at my Christmas group, it started off with this. This is lettering. And it's, a nice palette, and it's got these pretty roses. It ended up with one of, let me just have a look. Look at the rest of them. It ended up as a series of totally non-lettering related Christmas imagery that started out completely differently. Now, if I'd have, one of the most successful ones is this bear.
Hey, Vicky, can you hold something over it like a shadow, because it's coming in a little bit of white? I don't know if that will even help. No, that makes it worse. Never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Sorry.
Maybe angle it. Try angling it. Oh, that's the other way. Angle it the other way. Yeah, that's...
It's too light.
Yeah. That's better. Yeah, that's perfect. Right. Oop. It like adjusted.
I'll show you the first one again. If you look at that one, can you see it?
A little bit. It's a little washed out, but it might just be the nature of a screen looking at a screen. But if you kind of angle the bear, it seemed like if you tipped it, towards you, like the backs, like that. Like if you tip, you know what? Forget it. That's good.
Okay, this was the first one. This was the
can you try
late ones. The point being that if you don't go on with a concept and see it through to its bitter end, to the point where you don't want to do it anymore, you'll never know where it could take you. Yeah. And often it takes you to somewhere unexpected that you can use with your, subsequent groups. For example, that then led on to a different group where I bought myself a load of gouache paint and did some florals in gouache and another partridge. So,
hey Vicky, can you try turning off the light? Actually, you know what? It's you guys, when I look back at my computer, you can see it fine. So it's something with my screen looking at a screen. So maybe we can put together some thumbnails of these and put them in our Facebook, like some small low-res thumbnails, Vicky, if that's okay with you, so people can see what you're talking about. But keep holding them up and we'll just do our best to imagine.
I want to say that basically that group of Christmas designs then led to, it's about capitalizing on a concept. So that then led to another partridge surrounded by florals. This time the florals are done in gouache, and the partridge is an everyday theme. It's not Christmas. So it's about evolving your ideas and working. Is that better or worse? Better. Worse. Right. It's about working efficiently, because whether you're prolific or not will determine whether you sell your work or not as well, because it's very much to do with the amount of work you produce as much as the quality of work you produce.
Lisa Blue's asking about how often you work assignment versus blue sky, whatever you want. We actually already covered that, Lisa, and she said she does a little bit of both, and she can't really pin down a percentage because it's always changing. Sometimes she has a lot of client assignments one after the other, and sometimes there's like a period where she can just do whatever she wants. So that was her answer for that. Where are we? I think we kind of went off on a tangent, which is good. It was a good tangent. It's back to color. So you kind of covered this a little bit. I was going to ask you about, because I think you're a master at color combinations. The next question was about whether you start with a defined color palette or if you develop it. And you already answered that. You kind of have your core colors that you like to use, but you also are informed by color trends and like Pantone reports and things like that. So we know that. But is there any advice you can give artists like myself who I feel that I struggle with color? Like for me, it doesn't come naturally. I think I have good use of color in the end, but it's a real process for me. What kind of advice can you offer to artists like me who it doesn't come to very naturally, or someone that's starting out and just really has no idea, to improve their use of color?
I think you have to really identify which colors you particularly like. I don't think an ugly colour exists. I think that, nearly every shade of everything can be made to look appealing if it's combined with the correct shade of something else. And I think a lot of the problems with colour come when people are, they're kind of posturing as somebody else, trying to make their work look like somebody else's, or feeling that their work should be similar to somebody else's with a different colour sense. For me, there are certain colours I really struggle to work with. Limey greens, it just doesn't, it's more forced to me than working with pink, for example, which is why you don't see much limey green in my work. It's a lovely colour, but there are certain things that everybody gravitates towards, and if you can identify which colours you're gravitating towards and understand how to use them in good combinations. For example, a good colour palette, you should always have some kind of neutral in there. You need, a range of contrasts. You need lights, darks, mid-tones. A good palette will cover all of those. And, it can be a huge palette or a minimal palette, but the key thing is that it's got to reflect the colours that you care about, want to work with, and understand how they work, because not everybody relates to every colour, and that sounds like a very first world issue. But
well, I mean, and then maybe to the same point that we talked about, not we as in me and you, but Janetta and I on our Heart to Art on trends, you probably don't have to make like every color trend that comes up. If it doesn't fit with what you do, you don't have to do it, right?
Yeah.
Julie Hamilton was just saying that she's been trying to work in neons right now, because we all know neons are kind of hot for fashion and in stationery and stuff too, and she's having trouble with that. So maybe, Julie, you don't need to, unless someone's specifically asking you. Like if you have a client asking for it, then that's another thing.
Or maybe if you feel that you really want to challenge yourself and stick neon yellow into something, there is another thing about colour is there are certain cliches that are known to work. Like some that come to mind for me are, heathery greys and tan, neons and flesh tones. So there are some really more obvious ones where you'll pull, certain like colours together, like greens and blues, for example. But the point is about using the cliches and injecting something special into them. So the thing with neons is that they can be the special added to the cliche.
Cool.
So, for example, if you've got a very tonal palette and then you just put the surprise accent in, that's a way of making it work, for example.
Cool. That's some good advice. So Stephanie said that she loves working with neon green or yellow, right, Stephanie? And then someone else said that works for her. Bright colors, Stephanie's, are her trademark. Anyways, so Vicky, do you prefer to work digitally or by hand these days? And do you still do both?
No, I still do both, but more recently I've just enjoyed painting. I've enjoyed it so much. And I think, clients, they still want digital files for ease of use. Mm-hmm. So the best combination for me is to put something hand-rendered into a digital, composition. And I do enjoy using digital still. I haven't used Illustrator for a while because when you're doing hand-rendered stuff, it's smarter to use Photoshop. But I love working digitally. And I don't think I have a preference for anything, to be honest, other than just painting with anything. I don't think I have a preference for any particular type of medium or any, ink over acrylic over fine line. I just enjoy doing all of it, basically, yeah. And the more the better.
You do a lot of Vicky does a lot of live painting, which you guys can watch on her Periscope channel, which is what's your Periscope handle, Vicky?
At Vic J Designs.
At Vic J Designs. And she does a lot of live painting. That's mostly what she does when she's on Periscope. And what I was going to say is it's great because you actually do a lot of mixed media. You kind of have all your tools out in front of you and you just grab whatever strikes you and kind of use a lot of different kinds of paints and pens and all that kind of stuff.
In a big chaotic mess.
Somebody asked what your substrate is that you use and like what size and what paper, what's your go-to for that?
Well, any paper. I mean, any paper that's appropriate for the type of paint I'm using, but I think this size, which is about, what's that, 8 by 11 or something, 10 by 12.
It looks like a US letter size, which is 8.5 by 11.
Around that size tends to work. If it's a I don't know, some people work with bigger digital files, but I just find that keeps, the computer can't handle them as well as an A4 sized or US letter sized file. And I think that especially in Illustrator, well, you can work in any size, can't you? Because you can rescale easily. But I think in Photoshop, if you work 8 by 10, it's good enough for definitely for stationery. And if you're asked even to do a repeat for a larger sized design, for example, for fabric, the repeat itself usually will be around that size as well. Yeah. So I think as an initial piece of artwork, that's a good size. It also means that when a client wants to look at it or review it or do a presentation, they can easily, print it out on a piece of A4 paper or letter-size paper.
Okay. And we're kind of going back to digital. You touched on this a little bit. I was going to ask you what your go-to digital program is and why you prefer it over the others, but it sounds like lately you've been more into Photoshop because it's easier to incorporate use your hand-painted elements in Photoshop versus Illustrator.
Yeah, but don't get me wrong. I think Illustrator's like magic. I think it's amazing and it's really easy. And the thing I love about Illustrator is the fact that you can change colours in a heartbeat. You can totally and utterly change everything with the most, the minimum of fuss. Whereas in Photoshop, you've got to go, well, you probably know more about changing colours in Photoshop than I do, but I do it in a pretty long, drawn-out way.
Well, I mean, there's definitely, I know in Illustrator you can select like a color anywhere it occurs on the page and automatically and change it. You can't do that in Photoshop. There are ways to make it easier. But Illustrator is always going to be a lot easier for color changes.
And I think there are certain clients who do prefer Illustrator just because for ease of use for their in-house designers.
Yeah, the whole scale issue and then ease of use, yes. The problem is, like you were saying, when you have like hand-painted elements, or if you want really hand-done look, it's harder to work in Illustrator than in Photoshop. It's easier to manipulate things in Photoshop. So that's when, and because I do that, a lot of that in my work, that's why I almost always use Photoshop.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are benefits to each program for sure.
It depends on what you're setting out to do, doesn't it, on any given day, basically.
Yeah.
But it's good to know both.
Yes.
And understand what they're best for.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely important for anyone that wants to work in this field that they do know both. It's you're going to have people that need things from you for both. I've had to convert Photoshop files to Illustrator. They lose some of the quality, but a lot of times the client's okay with that. They'd rather have the vector files. So it's good to know both and be versed in both. And actually, you almost don't need to take a class anymore. You can look up free tutorials online to learn the program.
I take a class. I learned Photoshop years ago, just sitting on the sofa with 3 green blobs for about 2 hours until I managed to make them do something.
Yeah.
And then Illustrator I learned about 6 years ago. I couldn't put it off any longer and decided I had to learn it, and I just sat and learned it, and I think every time I came across a stumbling block I looked it up online.
Yeah. It's that's how a lot of people learn, I think. So where are we now? So people have been asking about your style. You have a strong and recognizable style that's very uniquely you, which I think a lot of artists want for themselves. And I think that's like the big struggle is like, how do I find my style? How do I make it me? And I'm not like imitating other people or what's already out there. How did you come to your current style?
It's difficult to say because, it's funny when you hear somebody say you've got a very unique, recognizable style, because you think, oh, have I? And then you think, oh, right. And then it's hard for you to objectively identify what your own style is. But I think I think there was a turning point for me where I finally began to embrace the things I like and accept the things I like and think that the things I like are good and that other people will like them too. And that was a big turning point for me because, in the studios, the design studios in New York, for example, the whole point is to be versatile, to be a chameleon, to try on everybody else's clothes that are successful at the moment. And that's the way you make a living. And then I think that if you're going to do this on your own and want to be taken seriously as an individual that stands out from the crowd, I think you have to at some point say, well, I've got to start doing the things that I like and stop trying to be a chameleon.
Yeah.
And that's what I decided to do. And some of the things I like are painting, and some of the other things I like are pink and creamy colours, and the colours I discussed before, the minty greens and blues. I like sketchy line drawings. I like lots of different techniques. And I sort of sat down and wrote, what do I like? What do I care about? And I think if you establish that, it goes back to what I was saying about colour as well. If you can establish in your head what means something to you and what you actually want to wake up in the morning and do, you'll be on your way to producing. That was another point for me. I said to myself, I want to start creating artwork that I would hang on my own wall, because I think a lot of us sit down and we produce artwork all day long that we wouldn't dream of putting in our own homes. And I was doing that for years, and I thought I finally want to do something that I would proudly announce is mine. And that was another breakthrough as well.
Yeah. Well, that's a tough one for me because my work's really whimsical and I would not have like cute little animals all over my house. But maybe if I had a kid, I'd put it in the kids' room. I
would have any of your dogs on the wall. I mean, you say it's whimsical, but it's very high-end whimsical, and it's very, it's very uniquely whimsical as well. And I think, when I say, I don't mean when I say it's something I'd have on my wall, it's got to be some kind of like cerebral abstract. It can be a figurative, cute thing that is of value to you as well, enough to want to have in your own home.
Okay, good. Oh, sometimes though I'm like, I don't design, like, I wish that what came out of me was like anthropology, but what comes out of me is not anthropology. So
I think everybody wishes what came out of them was anthropology, or what came out of them went to anthropology. More like.
I'm like, someday I want to have my designs in anthropology, and then I look at my work and I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen.
I don't know though. They do some really. I went there recently. I saw a very graphic.
For
snails all over a skirt, and I thought,
yeah, maybe here and there, maybe. I mean, they do sell like Rifle Paper Company stuff and stuff like that, like stationery items. So who knows? Maybe someday, maybe someday my dream will come true. You've actually had your prints when you worked for your fashion company, or when you owned your own company in anthropology, right?
Well, they were a regular customer of ours, and they would come to our stands at trade shows. And the thing is at that time it was the this is how old I am. It was, Sex and the City. It was all about vintage. Yeah. It was all about, reworking vintage into a modern contemporary context. And one of the things that our studio specialised in was buying up vintage fabrics or vintage clothing and reworking them into new, I guess, prototypes for clothing. Mm-hmm. And of course, because anthropology, that was what they were all about as well. So they really liked our work, and they bought a lot of vintage stuff from us. And in the end, they just became a fairly regular client, and we had a good relationship with them. But that was all. We're talking all women's wear, no homewares or anything. Which is, that would be my fantasy now.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll get there if it's your fantasy. Just waiting for it. So I'm kind of all over the place now, but I'm going to go back to working by hand. You said you don't have one go-to medium. You use a lot. Can you mention for people that are interested some of your favorite tools for working by hand? And if you have them, I don't know if you have them within hand's reach that you could show people anything.
Well, acrylic, hands down acrylic is I do like working with it. These little horses, can you see that?
Yeah.
They were a what's the word I'm looking for? A labour of love. And they are done with acrylic with collaged elements. And I used these things which I discovered in an art shop. They're called Posca pens. I discovered them in an art shop in Italy. And the art shops around here aren't very well equipped. In fact, it's really hard to find anything decent. And I found these pens, and I had no idea that they were a thing. And I thought, well, these are good. And then I discovered that they're actually, I think this is a Japanese brand of paint pens, and they're brilliant. And so I went and bought about 50 of them, and they come in all these really nice colours, look.
And they're called Posca pen? How do you spell it?
Posca. And they're paint pens, quite big, chunky pens. There's some thinner ones as well.
Is the tip like felt, or is it a brush? What is the tip like on them?
It's like a felt tip.
Okay.
Like a marker tip, but the actual substance that comes out is paint.
Okay.
And it's great, for doing... You can't do anything really detailed, but for example, this little pink leaf here was done with Posca pen and some of the detailing.
Okay.
this bit of scribble here, and I've really enjoyed working with those recently. Then I bought some gouache the other day, and I'm enjoying working with those. And then today I had a big experiment with inks and masking fluid, harkening back to student days. And on Periscope, actually, I did these.
Cool.
And I really enjoyed that. So, anything that comes to hand, I enjoy working with.
Cool. And again, I mentioned this before, but Vicky on her Periscope, which is Vic J Designs, right, Vicky? She does a lot of live painting. So if you want to follow her and you want to see her work live, she's on there quite a bit painting live. Okay, so I'm seriously going back and forth, but we were talking about your style. And you touched on this a little bit. When you're starting out, and you said it's okay when you're starting out, you're emulating people, you're trying things out on for size, and when you don't know and you haven't established a style, like that's okay, as long as you're not copying someone and then selling that work. But when you're first starting out, you copy the masters or what you imagine as present day masters. Like I'm sure there's a lot of people that imitate what you do that are newer. But the idea is once you get on your feet a little bit, you need to move away from emulating other people and kind of like push yourself to go in a new direction that's all on your own. Do you have any advice for artists for how they can do that? How they can develop their own unique style without imitating other people?
Well, I think you have to bear in mind that anything you do in your own unique style has got to be done within certain commercial parameters. So if your own unique style is to paint only in black, and you only want to paint tarantulas or something, you're not really going to be able to sell it. So your unique style has got to be within the context of what people want to buy. So, your colours that you use, the imagery that you use, the themes that you work towards have all got to be within a commercial context. But within that, there's a lot to play with. And there are lots of different ways of working within those commercial parameters. And I think a lot of us are locked into this fear of getting it wrong, doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like somebody who you admire's work, therefore it's wrong. And it's not wrong, it's just different. And I think as long as you bear in mind the certain unchanging things that our market is looking for, and you do it well, and hopefully you do it with a twist, an originality. I think you have to be fearless about what you're doing and trust what you like, basically, within the context of what other people, with what the market likes.
Yeah.
But I think that's fairly, what the market likes is fairly understandable if you stay abreast of what of what you're seeing on social media and on the internet.
Okay. Someone just asked, this is a little bit tangent, but there was another question that came in too. Feeling overwhelmed with the demand to have a big, strong presence on social media. And someone else asked about how much of your time do you spend working on your social media presence? Do you have anything to say about that? Like how much?
Yes. I have this to say. I think that my son must think that I'm some kind of robot with some kind of special attachment instead of a hand. Because that phone, I never put it down. But anyway, besides that, I'm seriously addicted to Instagram, and I'm constantly checking my phone, and I'm sure that it's not healthy. However, I do devote quite a lot of time to it, and it's enjoyable. I really do enjoy it. And I think that in order to be taken, I do think that it counts. I think that clients, they notice they do notice how big your Instagram following is, that they are paying attention to things like that. And they are looking for people on social media and finding them on social media, Pinterest, Instagram, etc. And I think you do have to pay attention to it. However, it's not something that you don't have to suddenly go from, zero to everything overnight. It's a slow process that requires a steady chipping away at it rather than, a gung-ho, got to get it done now approach. So you need to chip away slowly at it and systematically. And as I said, there are certain strategies that you can use that you can find on the internet in order for you to...
Someone was just asking what your Instagram account was, so I'm holding it up.
I thought it was because I was talking about strategies.
No.
But there are certain strategies that you can use in order to promote yourself more efficiently and get a following more quickly. And they're not any big mysterious secret. They're out there to be found on the internet, but you've got to be diligent. It's again about the showing up and about doing your part every day, a little bit at a time, putting your chess pieces in place.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think Instagram is great for artists. I would recommend that anyone have an Instagram. And I mean, what we do is such a visual thing. Take a picture of it, stick it on there. Even if you don't want to show the whole canvas or whatever, you can show a little piece of it. And people like to see that, they like to see behind the scenes. So if you can show yourself painting, or if you can show like what your tools are that you use, they definitely respond to that. And it's actually, if you just do one picture a day, it's not that hard if you're working on art every day. Even if you're not, I know, Vicky, you pull from your backlog of images and stuff, and you'll post that if you have a crazy day that you don't have time. And like you said, it's just showing up. And also as artists, what we're creating because we want people to see it and we want to get feedback. And Instagram's a way to do that easier with so many people. And not to say that you should judge your art by how many likes you get, but it is a good way to put things out and see what kind of a response you get. It's almost like a free testing ground for like trying things out and seeing how people respond to it. And, oh, they really loved this. I'm going to try a little bit more of that or push that idea even further. So I think it's a really great tool. And I think anyone who's not using it, not that you will fail or you can't succeed, but you're definitely missing out on a tool that could really help you even farther.
I agree. It's things like back to colour. You can exactly that. You can test to see which colours people respond to or which techniques. It's very interesting because there'll be like huge differences from one piece of art to the next of how many likes. And I don't think that's to do with, luck or how many people happen to be scrolling through that day. It's definitely to do with how visually appealing anything is that you've just stuck up on there. So I agree. I think that if you're not using Instagram and you're trying to become a working artist, or you are a working artist, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah. And someone just said they sell work via Instagram, and I know a lot of artists that sell originals or people that really rely on their Etsy shop as a big portion of their art business. Instagram is critical because you can have like sales on there, and a lot of the big Etsy shops. I follow this one, I think it's called Wild Plum Company, and she does these amazing weavings that are like the most beautiful colors of yarn, and she sells everything on Instagram because the minute she posts it, it all sells out. She does like raffle. Basically, the first one she'll post it, and the first one to give their PayPal address like gets it or whatever. So it's pretty incredible, and it's a great tool for selling. And then like some of the other things that we said for just testing things out and building your audience and that kind of thing. So you know what? I'm going to cut off the Instagram talk though, because that could be a whole Periscope all on its own social media. And we're going to talk about a lot more things with Vicky, but maybe Vicky can be on the scope when we talk about Instagram, and you can type in some of your tips and stuff for us.
So
what is next? Oh, This is a fun one. Do you have any recent projects that have come about that you can share with us? I'm thinking of one in specific, in general, that, no, what am I saying? I'm thinking of one specifically that I want to hear about.
Good timing.
I know.
Just today I found out that the Land of Nod have just brought out my some bedding that features some designs that I did earlier last year, and I've been waiting for them to come out. And there's some bedding and a growth chart, and they came out really nice. I'm really pleased with them, and I'm just trying to think of whether I need to redecorate an entire bedroom.
You should.
To go with them.
If people want to see them online, is there a name of the collection or something? Can they just look up Victoria Johnson on the Land of Nod site, or how do they see what you've done for them?
My name's on there, which I'm happy about, but I don't know if it would come up in a search. The bedding is called Fable.
Fable? Okay.
And the growth chart is called... I can't remember. If you look on my Instagram account, you'll see them both. Both pictures of both are posted.
Okay. Yeah, and I saw them yesterday. Jennifer Nelson actually posted them. She was all excited about it. And it's like an indigo blue, right? The bedding, isn't it that blue?
Yeah.
Which is really cool, too, because that's a huge trend right now, the blue and white. And it's cool that, because when it comes out right now, like a lot of times from the outside, it's like, oh, they just thought of that or whatever. But really, you were working on that like a year ago, right? So you were you were very ahead of the trend on that, and it came out at a perfect time. So that's really impressive and really cool.
Oh, well, they were very instrumental in determining what I did for them. You know, it wasn't that I kind of went to them with a suggestion. They came to me with a suggestion. So that's their amazing trend team.
And that's one of the benefits when you do start working with those companies that really pay attention to trends, and sometimes you get a peek into their style guides or what things that they already know about, which is really great for you because it advises you on your future designs too.
Oh, it's massive. In fact, there's an awful lot of information to be gleaned from whoever you're working with. Across the board. It's a great way of understanding what's going on in the world. The other thing I was going to show you regarding good timing is these came through the other day, which are my Wyndham fabric.
Oh, cool.
Samples. I can't tell you how happy I am about these, because the best part for me is that I actually think I would wear them. And I need to buy a sewing machine and learn how to sew so I can make them into something. But there's this one is the key. Can you see it?
Try it. Can you hold it up closer, maybe? I don't know if that... Yeah, that makes it better so people can see the details. They can see these on your Instagram too, right, Vicky, if people want to see the detail?
This is the point. I haven't posted them, the samples yet. I posted some ones that weren't the real thing, strike-offs before. But these... hang on, let me see if I can show you. There's 20, is there 20 or 17 different ones? And they came out really nice, and I'm really pleased with them. Very, very pleased with them. And I've got another collection in the pipeline with them at the moment.
Yeah, I love Wyndham has some really great designers, including you, and I love that collection. What's it called? I know it focuses around the butterflies. What did you name that one?
Whisper.
Whisper. That's pretty. And it's a really like a peach, like a beigey peach and navy and your pinks and stuff like that, right? That the color.
I saw the colours that, it was based on some artwork that I did for butterfly placements. And it's totally the colours, that I gravitate towards.
And it's funny too, because now I'm thinking about it, you developed it a while ago, over a year ago, and it works perfectly with the new Pantone colors, because there's
I know, right? It's unbelievable. That was just a total coincidence. I've got so many pieces of artwork that correspond to this year's Pantone colour palette. It's
just amazing. That's great. I have nothing, so I need to work on that.
It's coincidence.
No, it's not. It's your knowledge and foresight. Okay, is there any other recent work that you want to share with us? Any paintings or anything that you've done? It's okay if no, you've shown us plenty, but we love to see it.
I showed you the flashy things, and I showed you, oh, you've probably seen these all over Instagram, these cakes, little paintings. These are all done on Periscope. What I enjoyed about doing these was I didn't actually know what I was going to do.
Can you push them closer?
Periscope.
Can you push them closer to the camera?
All I knew was that I was going to do some teacups, and these just sprung out of the top of my head. And also they were kind of like, even more experimental than they would have otherwise been, because I had to do it. I sort of had the gun to my head of having to. It was one of the first few Periscopes that I did. I think I did them on 4 separate Periscopes, and I hadn't got much experience of doing Periscope, and so I felt very under pressure to produce something right there and then, and so I did. And it was good. It was a good exercise. It really was, and I like the outcome. It's quite good to not know what you're doing and just wing it sometimes.
Someone just asked a question about does a client ever, when you present your hand paintings to a client, do they ever want you to develop it further and you have to paint new items to go along with that original painting? Like, do you ever have to develop a collection around an original painting by painting some more?
Not just with paintings. Basically, client projects are there's a huge variety of types of client projects. Some are where they will take an existing piece that they like and ask you to develop it, or they may take, for example, a client saw my embroideries and asked me to do a brand new embroidery. My embroideries were of teacups, and they asked me to embroider a slice of cake, which was fine. It was capitalising on a technique I already had. Other times I'll just buy or license a piece as is, or other times I'll say, we like this, for example, with the Land of Nod, they liked a piece of work. They didn't like the whole look of it. They liked elements in it, and then they had their own version of they had their own trends and their themes they were working on, and they wanted me to take what I'd done and incorporate it into what their trends and themes were for the season.
Okay.
And make a blend of the two. So it totally depends on the client, the project, and the way the planets are aligned, basically.
Cool. Okay, so you and I in the past have talked about the issue that many of us artists and designers have, where we're never satisfied with where we are professionally, and we're always looking ahead to like our next conquest. Like, it's always more. Like we meet one of our goals and then it's like old news and you don't even care. And you're like, but I haven't done this yet, or I'm not there yet, or all this, like, I haven't been in anthropology yet. So and then we talk about how we both determined that it's important to actually take time to stop and take stock of your achievements and give yourself credit for how far you've come. So I wanted to ask you so that you can share with people a little bit, what are some of your achievements or projects that you've worked on that you're allowed to talk about, obviously, that you're proud of, and that you need to stop and take stock of and be like, wow, that was something that I really was a goal of mine and I reached it, and instead of looking ahead, I need to look back and congratulate myself for that.
I think at the beginning of actually in about the autumn of 2014, I'd done my first Certex, and I decided, I'd established myself to an extent, and I was quite proud of the prior 2 years of what I'd accomplished, but there were certain other things that I wanted to do more painting. There were certain companies that I wanted to reach. I wanted a fabric collection. I wanted some wall art. I'd done mainly stationery. There were still a lot of things that I hadn't yet ticked off. And over the course of the last year, I wanted to work with a good, reputable fabric company, and I've now ticked that box and am continuing to work with them. I had Land of Nod in neon lights on my wish list, and I am really pleased that came to fruition, and hope that I'll continue working with them. Oopsie Daisy, I know a lot of people have had success with Oopsie Daisy. For some reason, I could not. I think because I was doing mainly digital work, I could not get their attention. Yeah. That happened.
I didn't know that. That's great. Congratulations.
Yeah, I've not seen any samples, but yeah, they licensed some pieces.
You have to ask, Vicky, you have to ask for your samples from them.
Oh, okay. Right, okay. Good to know. Well, I think now is about the time where lots of last year's things are actually coming out. Yeah, what I did was I kind of had my list, my goals identified as Omar Wynne advises you to do, and she's the best person at establishing her goals and sticking rigidly to achieving them. And I followed her advice about writing down a goals book and keeping, really nailing down what I wanted. And I worked towards it, and I did some designs that were very, very specifically geared towards the companies that I had in my head. I researched the company and decided, right, I want to get you, and I want to draw your attention to me. And I did work, thinking about them. And so it kind of paid off. And, which kind of like is in contrast to what I was saying earlier about, making sure that your work has a broad appeal. But this was a very specific project that I set up for myself in that very specific period of time. And it's something that I'm going to do again because it worked. And I'm very pleased about that. Very pleased.
Great. Someone was asking if you got these deals on your own or through an agent, and I know it's a combination of both. I think a lot of people think that when you get an agent, it's like, well, not necessarily everybody thinks this, but like it's going to be this magical thing where you don't have to try anymore. But I think it's really important that artists, and this is from talking to a lot of people that have agents, I think it's important that you still put yourself out there. And like Vicky was saying, she designs things with specific clients in mind. So it's working with your agent. You're kind of like a team to get those deals, wouldn't you say? And some of them are based on, for you, because it's only been a year in with Jennifer Nelson, some of them are based on past relationships that you already had developed. And then Jennifer also introduced you to some new people that she had relationships with. Am I right?
No matter what situation you're in, if you're steering your own course, or if you have the help of an agent, you still have to show up every day. You still have to strategize. You still have to plot and scheme, and you still have to work hard. And there's no escaping it. And an agent isn't going to alleviate the responsibility to yourself in any way. You've still got to do that. You can't sit back and say, okay, I'll just relax a bit. No, you can't. You've got to keep on pushing and promoting and producing and doing the best you can. And it's relentless, and you have to be on board with it in order for it to have a hope of working out.
Yeah.
I really think.
Cool. Okay, so for artists who have their own goals, what steps can they take to better situate themselves to achieve their goals? And maybe Omar Wynne can chime in here, because she is, if you guys don't follow Omar, she's right there. She said agree. What steps do you take to achieve your goals, to make sure you achieve them? How do you define them and make them actionable? And basically, what kind of advice can you give people who have goals that they want to achieve but don't really know how to go about making them happen?
I think you need to clarify your goals. Primarily, you've got to nail them down and say what they are, and they've got to be limited, and they can't be broad-reaching. Oh, I want to be fabulous. You've got to say, what you actually, Omar's goal book was fantastic because you write in the present tense, I see myself doing such and such, I am doing, speak in the present tense as if you're already there and doing something. I have my collection with I have an entire half a shop of my products in anthropology. No, but you have to identify and clarify what your specific goals are. And then you've got more of a chance of identifying the specific steps that you need to follow in order to achieve those goals. And it is all about having very clear objectives in your head. When I started Victoria Johnson Design, I wrote myself a business plan. Coming from owning a business, I knew how important it was to do a business plan, and I wrote one, and it was fairly comprehensive. And I followed a guide, business plans for dummies, in fact, and I did it rigorously. And I had a mission statement and a set of goals and a 3-year plan, and that's also what I did with my business as my studio. We had a really comprehensive business plan, and we had a financial projection, and we stuck to it to the penny, and it paid off. And I think that planning and goal setting is vitally important, but you've got to really understand what those goals are.
Yeah. There's this trend that I've seen a lot of artists do where they pick a word for the year. Have you heard of that? And they make sure that everything that they do fits with that word. So for instance, if my word was passion, making sure, because that would be a good one for me, because one of my goals for 2016 is that I do less of what I feel like I have to do and more of what I'm passionate about. So that would mean saying no to some paid projects. So if your word is passion, for instance, everything that you do for your business that year needs to work with your word. And it kind of gives you a focus and guides you on making business decisions where it's okay, so I just got this job offer to do a logo for a financial company that wants a building as part of the logo, and I have to say no because I'm not passionate about that project. I don't think it's going to forward my business goals. So it's kind of a way to really focus yourself for the coming year and not be I have so many unattainable goals. So I thought I'd just bring that up because I that really spoke to me.
Idea.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool idea. Is anyone out there doing that? Does anyone have a word that they want to share that they're doing for the year? There's usually a delay, but
I think that's brilliant because I've kind of inadvertently done that for myself without having any idea that this thing existed. But I reframed in my mind what I'm going for this year, and I've reframed it, with a specific term that I'm saying I want to apply to everything I'm doing. I'm not telling you what it is, but but I have done it, and I think it's a really good idea, and it also is a very motivating idea because if you frame what you're doing clearly in your head, it gives you the motivation to actually get it and understand why you're doing it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a consultation with Maria Brophy too. I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she's an art consultant. And she told me that it's important to have your business goals written down because when you're making decisions about contracts and things like that, if you really use those goals as a basis of being does this forward my business goals? And if the answer is no, it informs you about how you should respond to different opportunities that come your way. So it's really, I think the first step is writing them down. And if you're really fancy, you should do a goals, a art book like Omar does, where it's a goals journal, which is really beautiful. Maybe she'll share that again in the future.
I think there are really other ways to do that. You can do, you might not be as organised and disciplined as Omar to do the goals book. I tried to do it this year, but last year I did my version of it, which is very randomly scribbled, sort of badly assembled bunch of ideas that I kept in a big IKEA notepad. And it served a purpose. It really worked. So I think you can do it in a more scattered way as well.
Omar just said someone wanted her to illustrate 300 exercise poses. Nope. She's like, if it's not food, I ain't doing it. No, I'm just kidding. Omar does more than food, but she's really good at food. So I was going to open up to people if they have Q&A for Victoria right now. If you have any questions that we didn't cover or anything that you want to ask about further. I don't really want to get more. Like I said, we talked about Instagram for a long time. So, I mean, if you have specific questions there, that's fine. But I don't really want to go on a deep, dark, long talk about social media. But if anyone has any questions for Vicky about her creative process,
you don't want to go down that tunnel.
We could talk about that for hours. Like, you're never going to be able to go to bed. It's like, what time is it there, Vicky? It's getting late for you.
It's 11:30, but it's okay. I'm enjoying myself.
Oh, thank you, Jamie. Jamie said this was amazing. Thanks, Jamie. Here's a question. Do you sell your copyright if approached with a brief by a client like Land of Nod?
Generally you don't. Well, yeah, you don't use it. You can do a thing called work for hire, where you never really owned the copyright in the first place. You're just being paid for the hours that you're working. Generally, you don't tend to sell your copyright. You work for a flat fee, but it's kind of understood that the work that you're doing, if you're briefed, it's not really, it's not something that you can post all over social media, and it's not something that you can post on your website as part of your portfolio. Generally, it's understood that you're doing it for them and it's theirs. And that's kind of a professional understanding. Mm-hmm. I guess some companies put it in a contract as well, but I can't remember. I'm sure they do. I can't remember. I just think I automatically assume that it's not really mine.
Yeah.
For showing around.
Yeah. Someone asked about trade shows. Do you think exhibiting at trade shows has been helpful to you?
Yeah. Hands down, yes. Why? The first year it was helpful to me because I actually, made a big bunch of cash. The second year I didn't make a big bunch of cash. However, going to Certex sticks you into the epicenter of the industry. You meet all the key people. You experience firsthand what's going on. It's so much fun. It is the highlight of my year. And it really was an enormous boost to my career. I think it really put me on the map a little bit by going there and being there. And I would recommend it for
That's
sure.
Great. And
I think that, it's best to go there with certain things in place before you go.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely a good idea.
And I just wanted to let everyone know, because I just found out yesterday, our next Heart to Art is going to be in 2 weeks on, Wednesday, February 3rd. And we're having Christian Howell, if you know who Christian Howell is. She's an amazing designer who's done really well. And she's like a guest speaker or guest designer on TV shows and magazines and stuff like that. And she's done all of the trade shows, and our next Heart to Art is going to be with her, and we're going to be specifically talking about trade shows. So we'll talk about Certex a lot. So if you guys want to watch that, put it in your calendar. It should be a really good one too. So the next question I saw was, is it important to have a diverse portfolio? For instance, is it okay to just have, if you love doing florals, is it okay to only have florals to show? Or do you think you need to have more and have more diversity in your portfolio?
I don't think you need to have every single theme, subject matter possible. I don't think you need to be that diverse. You don't need to swing violently from Halloween to rocket ships to cats dressed as rabbits on trains. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to have everything. You can have your niche, and you can do it well, and you can care about it enough to do it very well. But I think that there are certain things that you would be well advised to include because they are commercially in demand, and you'll make more money and a better living from doing them. For example, Christmas. I do bucket loads of Christmas because it sells. It just sells and sells and sells and sells. And as I've said before, you know, certain subject matter like butterflies, flowers, birds, you know, different animals that appeal, that have, you know, childlike appeal, they will sell. They will sell. So you maximise your ability to sell your work by having diversity in your portfolio, but you don't need, but you need, it's like I said before, you need to be consistent. You need to be consistent and with what you care about, because if you don't care about it, it's going to show, and it's going to, your body of work is going to start lacking cohesion. And I think that cohesion is everything, because it's what determines, you know, whether you have a recognisable style, for example.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that.
Someone said good because I only want to do holiday art, which good for you because most people don't want to do it, and it's important to do it.
Yeah.
When I worked in-house for a manufacturer of gift and stationery products, we were working on Christmas probably 3/4 of the year. And it was like always Christmas there, because that is what sells the most. That's when buyers buy the most art for that season, or most art for products for that season. If you think about it, like, when is the biggest shopping time of the year? Like, if you're selling your art for products, you really need to find a way to work in a little bit of Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that you have to. Nobody's pointing a gun to your head. It's just that if you want to, you know, I make a considerable chunk of my annual income from Christmas artwork, and you don't have to do. Again, it's about taking the parameters of what's commercial and doing it in a way that appeals to you, that you care about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look at it too, like, I don't love doing Christmas. I don't mind doing it. But it's not my favorite. But if you look at it, like, sometimes you have to do things to help support what you want to do. Like, if you do a little bit of work because you know it's going to sell and make you some money, it supports you to be able to spend the next week working on a passion project or something. Yeah. So, that's another way to look at it.
Yeah, totally.
Somebody asked, about you living in Rome, and does that inspire your work in any way versus if you just lived in the UK or back in New York?
Well, I don't know if there are any Italians on this Periscope, but I have to say that in terms of democratic design, i.e. design for the masses, so far Italy to me is a barren wasteland. I mean, really, if you want inspiration for democratic design, you know, like, we're talking about high street retailers, you know, we're talking about Paperchase, IKEA, Land of Nod, etc. There is nothing that compares here at all. Well, there is IKEA. That's it, pretty much. Maison du Monde, a French company. I am so desperate to walk down a high street and see the inspiration. When I go to England, it's like an Aladdin's cave.
Oh.
It's going into any old basic stationery store in England or supermarket it's an Aladdin's cave of good basic design at reasonable prices. Here, if you want anything, any surface pattern on anything, unless you want like 1980s sunflowers or poppies or I don't know. There's not very much to inspire me here, I have to tell you. And I think most British and Americans would agree with me that if they buy all their Christmas cards online, if they want any pretty stationery, they'll get it from home.
Well, Vicky, what about the beautiful scenery around you in Rome? Does that inspire you in any way?
Well, yes, in as much as, I went to Sicily, Rome, Sicily. I went to Sicily and I painted all the buildings and drew all the buildings, and that was hugely inspiring. Of course, it's a beautiful place, and, there are the delicious food, for example, but there is very little variety, and as I say, there's very little, unless you want to particularly do a set of designs based on beautiful architecture, which is what Rome is famous for, or Roman architecture. There isn't much that you can be inspired by, to be honest. I mean, I'm just being honest here. Where do most people go for inspiration? It's blogs like Print and Pattern that show a huge, enormous range of what's in the shops, and those shops aren't on the high streets here.
Yeah.
To the extent that they are in England and America.
Yeah.
And when you go very high end and you're talking about Fendi and Gucci, of course, they're like world renowned, but I'm not drawing from those for the work that I do.
Okay. I just wrote down tips, but I don't know what tips. Someone asked a question about tips, but now I don't know what they are. If you're on there, ask it. Otherwise, I think that's the last question I saw. That's not helpful. It just says tips on my... Oh, there we go. Thank you, Pippa. Tips for approaching art directors. Do you have any tips for approaching art directors?
Approaching or finding names?
I think both. How do you find... Because I saw someone ask that earlier, too. How do you find the contacts, and how do you, once you have them, how do you present yourself?
Well, I found the best way to get in touch with, first of all, do a bit of research about addresses, where HQs are, where, who is the art director. You can find all that. You can find names on LinkedIn in a heartbeat. You can say, okay, Papyrus, art director, and you can find lists of names on LinkedIn. The question then is getting the contact information. Use the phone, pick up the phone and talk to the person on reception and say, could I please talk to such and such a person, because you've now got the name. And they'll say, no, you have to do this, or they'll say, yes, I'll put you through, or they'll say, yes, here's their answer machine, or yes, I'll pass you on to somebody else. And you just go through this long and tedious and drawn out process, but at the end of it, invariably, you'll get that contact information. It works. I
was just shaking my head when you were talking about calling them. I think a lot of designers have an aversion, and Becca said she does too, to picking up the phone and calling. But it's true.
It works, because in the past that was the only way to do it, and that's how we had an enormous client list with my fashion studio, and it was, a lot of it was established from doing just that. You call up, you say, I have these goods, they're great, I'll send you some JPEGs if you need. You don't say it like this, you say it in a very fawning and grovelling and polite way. But basically what you're saying is, I have these products, they're legitimate, I am credible, and I would like to speak to the right person who may be interested in purchasing them.
Yeah.
And it works.
So I have a tip on email addresses. Someone was just asking, so their email addresses aren't on LinkedIn, and the answer is no. If you're not connected with them, that it's not really, and it's a lot of times people don't want to be connected to you unless you really have a relationship with them. But there is a way, if you can find an email address at the company, like from their website, of a person's name. So a lot of times it will be like the marketing director or something they'll post on their website, or their press person, and say it's, and this is not what it is there, so don't quote me on this, but say for West Elm, if they post their press person as John.Carter at West Elm, then you know that's their formula usually for names. So if you just get the name of the art director and say the art director is Victoria Johnson, and you send an email to victoria.johnson@westelm.com, a lot of times that works. I've done it before and it works. So you can try that. That's just my little tip. So once you have the contacts, Vicky, how do you present yourself, or what do you say?
Well, very, what's the word, deferential. I'm always extremely polite and extremely, the British have a way, a kind of laughable way of, would it be possible, all this sort of stuff. But I think it goes down well. I think that if I receive an email from somebody and it's written in that tone, I consider the person to be friendly and respectful. So I'm always like great pains to be extremely respectful and to be aware of the fact that I'm asking for something. Because at the end of the day, you are asking for something, you are peddling your wares. And I think you need to understand that and be very respectful of it and show that you understand that.
Yep.
At the same time, you don't want to be putting yourself down or making out that you're some kind of like grovelling pest. I mean, you are credible and you do have something worthwhile. So it's like striking that balance between understanding your worth and understanding that you are essentially asking for a favour. Please look at this and please respond. But you do understand that it could be of value to them. So that's a difficult note to strike, but I do bear that in mind.
Yep.
And don't waffle on. No one really, I mean, this is a bit brutal, but no one really cares why you did it, your piece of artwork or the meaning behind it. They don't care. They just want to know whether it will look good on their product and sell their product.
Yeah.
Nobody needs that extra piece of information about what inspired you, or even, in my opinion, the name of a collection is largely irrelevant, at least initially.
Yeah, it's more like show the art. Let the art speak for itself.
Yeah.
Don't try to explain your style or something like that. Like, just introduce yourself, what you do, and then show them your art, basically, right? I mean, be polite about it, but...
Yeah, but you don't need to be explaining how, you like to take long walks in nature and the flora and fauna. Inspired, I don't know.
That's the way to lose somebody within the first sentence, right?
Yeah, because I mean, that's nice if if you want to put that sort of thing as an extra piece of information about you on your own promotional material, your website. That's nice, and it adds value to you and says who you are as a person. But in an email where you're trying to just show somebody your work, it's just a distraction and it's not necessary, and nobody cares.
Okay. I don't understand that question. What makes them give you their email address? People don't usually give you an email address, so you got to find it.
Yeah.
And then you can email them until they tell you to stop. Like, when we talked to Jennifer Nelson actually a couple of weeks ago, she said, listen, art directors and art buyers and agents, they like seeing artwork. So, like, they like it if you send them a few things, as long as you're not clogging up their inboxes with tons of files or huge files. They like to see it. Just because they don't respond doesn't mean they hate you or they don't like your work. They're really busy. So it's fine to keep sending. Just keep sending your work as it comes new. And if they don't want to get emails from you anymore and they tell you that, then stop emailing them. But otherwise, it's fine. So.
No, it's fine. The main thing is to not get disheartened if you don't get a response. Yeah. The objective is not to get a response. The objective is to get noticed. That doesn't always automatically mean a response. That could mean, in my case, I showed up at in 2014 at Certex, having sent out tons of emails and thinking no one was noticing, and suddenly realising that when I'm face to face with these people, they have noticed. They know who I am.
Yeah.
the point is to get noticed.
Yeah.
Because that will ultimately lead to, eventually, you would hope, the response you're looking for, and then the relationship building that will lead to a steady supply of work. But it is about establishing relationships. And the first part of that is waving hello. And the best way to wave hello is with new work.
Yep. And okay, so she clarified that she was asking on the phone when you call, how do you get them to give them their email address? And I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, Vicky, you're not going to call a company. Most of the time they will not hand you over to the art director. If they do, you'll be surprised. You ask for the art director, and if they say no, you can ask for their email address. And if they say no, you can ask for, okay, well, I would like to submit art to your company for consideration. Yeah. Who should I send it to? And they'll either give you like a submissions at company name, or even sometimes the receptionist will give you their email address and say they'll forward it to the person. So
yes, that happened to me.
Yeah. So and sometimes, I've sent emails to sales at, like, the only email address I could find for the company was sales at company name. And I sent them an email and I said, I'm interested in working with your company. Here's some examples of my work. Will you please forward this to the person that it's appropriate for, the art director or creative director? And they did, and I still work with that. I work with that company on a regular basis. So, it's just trying to get in any way that you can. And then, yeah, you never know unless you try.
And following it through to the bitter end as well, not coming up against one block and saying, oh, well, that receptionist, she said no, You've got to keep being creative and finding your ways around it. Yeah. And finally, after 5 attempts, you might give up. But if you really want to have a chance, you've got to be persistent. I'm going to have to just plug my computer in because it's going to go cut out. Give me 1 second.
Well, I think we're almost done, Vicky. You can plug it in, but I think we're pretty much ready to wrap up. I just wanted to tell you guys, for those of you who are new, we do have a Facebook group if you're interested, where we talk about the topic, and we'll probably be posting some of Vicky's little thumbnails of her art she was showing, since they didn't show up very well in the scope. And a lot of times we'll post the links to the scope if you want to rewatch it, because it's only up on Periscope for 24 hours. So the Facebook group is facebook.com/groups/heart2art talk, and that's a number 2, not TO. So you can join there, and we just ask that if your Facebook profile isn't obviously connected to art in any way, give us a link to your art site or something. We're trying to keep trolls and just random people out of there, so please let us know that you're an artist, and that your relevance to the group if you want to join. Again, come back next February 3rd if you're interested in hearing all about trade shows from the fabulous Christian Howell. She's going to be joining us on February 3rd. That's a Wednesday. And I wanted to remind you that Vicky is available for artist consultations, where she talks about, I can't read this because it's backwards. She can work with you on building collections, rounding out your portfolio, creating color palettes, identifying your strengths and weaknesses. It's basically, she's not going to do all of those things in one session probably. It's more like, what do you need as an artist? What are your goals? How do you want to pick her brain on specifically? So you can find Victoria at these links. Take a screenshot if you don't have those. That's her website where you can find out more about her artist consultations. And that's her Instagram and her Facebook page if you want to just follow her art and see what she's up to. She's got some beautiful eye candy on a regular basis to follow. So is there anything, Vicky, that you wanted to say before we sign off?
No, nothing other than the fact that was great and I really enjoyed it, and I just think that your whole Heart to Art series is fantastic, and thank you.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate you asking me to do this. I really enjoyed it.
Yay! Yeah, I wish Janetta could have been here too, because it's nice to get her perspective on things. It's fun having more people together, but she's at Alt Summit this week. But it has been really fun, and I'm thankful to you for stepping in while she's gone and for being so open with all of the questions. And being really thoughtful. And I think I learned a lot from just talking to you and picking your brain, and I hope that everyone else did too. Actually, I'm seeing some comments come in where they said it was really helpful and a lot of great info. So thank you so much for being here, Vicky. It was really fun, as usual. We get a little more feisty when we're not on a public broadcast. But I think maybe a little bit of that shown through here and there.
No, this is the nice tidied up version.
We also don't look this nice on our private broadcast.
Oh no, I really don't. I even did my hair.
I know.
But kind of like, yeah.
I'm usually in my pajamas and no makeup, and you're like, Vicky's like, are you sick? Are you sick today?
We did our best.
Yeah.
Everybody.
You got to put on your face. So anyways, it was really fun having you guys. Thank you for joining us live. Thank you for your questions. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Anne. Bye. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/heart2art talk.